Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. It's great to have a very nice turnout for this session. We're very excited about the series that we are supporting Dr. Conway Turner's focus on racial justice during this time and converting our traditional day of service over to a month-long focus. And we're very excited to have Open Buffalo with us today. I've gotten to know their great work over the past couple of months while we've been planning this session. They have an initiative called 716 Votes that they're going to be talking about with us today, and that is an effort to engage, educate, and activate people of color ages 16 to 25 around the election and civic engagement. So we're going to be learning about those efforts and the mobilization they've been able to do through a series of activities and events and the importance of this issue through their perspective. So I'm going to introduce you to Franchelle Parker. She is the Executive Director of Open Buffalo, and she is a Buff State alum. Woo, woo, woo. Franchelle was born and raised in Niagara Falls. She majored in political science and African American studies here at Buffalo State. She was a Ronald E. McNair Scholar, and she traveled the country presenting her research on connecting music and activism, as well as on the community impact of drug sentencing laws. She participated in a fellowship with the Congressional Black Caucus on Capitol Hill, and then attended the University at Albany for her graduate education, where she majored in public policy. Her full biography is going to be linked in the chat right to our website, and we'll put the Open Buffalo website in the chat as well, so that you can learn more about Open Buffalo as the session goes on. So I'm going to turn it over to Franchelle, and we welcome you and appreciate your collaboration on this initiative, and we're very excited to have you with us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura. I'm super excited about this presentation. It caused me to reflect where I was actually 20 years ago when I participated in my very first Get Out the Vote rally, and it was at the Buffalo State campus. And we had thousands of people in the sports stadium. I think Hillary Clinton came, and there were balloons and rally signs and energy, and we had a band, we had dancers.
Very cool.
And
that was before my time.
Awesome. It was awesome. And it just really reminds me how much has changed over the last 2 decades, especially how much has changed just this year with COVID and how we're maneuvering in this moment. But it doesn't mean that the energy dies. It doesn't mean that the activism dies. It just means that it takes a different form. So I'm happy to learn with you all today, learn how to do a Get Out the Vote rally and still have these conversations even though we're behind computer screens. We know that in order to move our nation and our country forward, relationship building has to be at the key of that. So I just want to thank the leadership at Buffalo State for bringing together this opportunity for us to really talk about what's at stake in this coming election and what's at stake for us going into 2021 as well. So we are going to presentation, and again, I'm asking for your grace as we maneuver some of the technical things in this presentation as well. So as I stated, my name is Franchelle Parker, proud alum of Buffalo State. And I've really been doing community organizing, politics, and activism since being on the Buffalo State campus. I feel as though it's my life's calling to do this work, to help educate folks in the community about what their rights are, and how to actualize that. That's been a lot of the work that we've been doing this year. As you can see in the first screen, these are 9 members of our youth advocacy team that spent the summer, despite COVID, out having conversations with people in the community, registering people to vote, and helping them fill out their census as well. As we dive into today's presentation, I just want to create a an environment for us to have this conversation. There are a lot of divisive and scary things and statements being said across the nation, in the media, or even at Starbucks. Right? We want today's session, although virtual, to be a safe and welcoming environment for everyone. So in order to do that, we just really want to set some ground rules as we enter in today's conversation. Open Buffalo, we are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. And what that means is that we want people to vote. We're not telling you which political party to vote for, which candidate to vote for. We want to strictly talk about the issues, inform you, give you the knowledge that you need, and you make those decisions for yourself. We think it's important, irregardless of who you vote for or how you vote, and we'll talk about how you vote later on today, but the fact of the matter is that we want you to really utilize your power and for you to vote. So today, I will encourage you to utilize the chat function. So while we're in that chat function, please let's not talk about candidates. We can talk about issues. So if there are things that you want to bring up, or if you have a specific policy question, feel free to put that into the chat function as well. There's 2020 in particular, with our racial uprisings and COVID and some of the things that are happening in our economy. It brings up a lot of emotions for folks, and that's okay. We really want you to lean into that and really embrace how you're feeling in the moment. So we encourage you to take care of yourself. If you need to stop and take a few deep breaths, that's fine. If you need to stop looking at the screen for a few minutes, that's fine. But please rejoin us. But we really want you to take care of yourself. We don't want you leaving today's session feeling charged or anxiety driven. So just really listen to your spirit, listen to your body. Lastly, be open to learn and unlearn. Throughout 2020, we've seen that the line has really been drawn in the sand and how we communicate with each other. What's happening in the media. Many of us come to these conversations thinking we already know what we need to know and that we're just here to debate. Today, we really want to create an inclusive environment so that everyone can have their voices heard, but do that in a way that's safe, healing, and holistic for everyone. All right, so if everyone is on board for that, please put your name and your class into the chat function. And putting your name and your class year into the chat function says, I'm completely in for having a nonprofit, nonpartisan conversation. I'm going to stick to the issues. I'm not going to belittle anyone, and I'm going to be open to learning and unlearning here today. All right, what is Open Buffalo? Open Buffalo, our mission is to advance racial, economic, and ecological justice. Our work revolves around building the capacity of people. Many times we wait for our help to come from elected officials or organizations, help to come from Albany, help to come from Washington, D.C., but we really know the issues that we face in our own communities. We know what's wrong, we know what's right, we know how to fix them. Many times we don't have the networks, we don't have the resources, or we don't have the skills in order to fix our own problems. And that's where Open Buffalo comes in. Our aim is to fill the gap in that by offering training and capacity building, resources, connecting folks with mentors in the community in order to further campaigns, advocacy goals towards, again, racial, economic, and ecological justice. We've been around since 2014. Since then, we've trained over 650 individuals in skills such as community organizing, advocacy, art integration, restorative justice, and ecological wellness and sustainability. So if you are interested in joining any of those programs, we would love to have you in on those sessions as well. All right. As I just stated, art integration, we really believe at Open Buffalo that art is the soul of the movement. And many times artists reflect what's happening in the moment. As Laura read, art and activism is really my passion since Buffalo State College. And today we want to start off, and this is a video by an artist outside of Cleveland, Ohio, and just expressing some things. But after, we want to use this as a reflection point to further our conversation. So we'll watch a short music video by Yellow Pain.
Enough electoral votes, more than 270, more than enough to become the 44th president of the United States. He will be the first African-American president of the United States.
I've been broke all my life, but I kept hope all them nights. You see business in my city? Yeah, they closed all them twice. I was just riding down Salem, all them damn potholes, I can't drive. I know y'all can fix it faster, but I know y'all won't try. Don't nobody care about us, and that's why I don't vote. Voted for Obama back in 2012. I remember that's when I had hope. He was saying, yes, we can. And everybody got less food stamps. And when I turned 21, I was still broke. I'd never vote again. I don't think I ever had a president make my life better. Did it all on my own. Ain't no politician ever do a nice gesture. I don't even know the mayor's name. I ain't never seen her one time ever. Tell me how she gonna help the city. What I'm supposed to do, write letters? What I'm supposed to do, blame Trump? He ain't never really gave ain't nobody raised minimum wage. None of these jobs pay enough. I think they just want to keep us broke, cause they ain't putting none in place for us. This how all my people feel, but we gotta learn. We complained enough, let me change it up. Everything I just said, everybody I know think the same way. See, they don't want to see us vote, and we never do, so we see the same thing. But all our votes really do count, and they'll never really let it show. So now I'm finna break it down, cause if I don't, you would probably never know. First thing first, you know back in middle school when they taught us, it was 3 branches of the government. We forgot it when we got older. It's the judicial, the legislative, and executive. But all we know is the executive. That's the mayor or the governor and the president. Now none of them 3 people make no laws, they just be checking them. The laws come to their desk and all they do is say no or yes to it. So when the news station tried to tell us that Barack Obama couldn't put us on, we was all salty at Obama when it was the Congress members all along. We gotta focus on the legislative branch. Yeah, they the ones that make the laws. Yeah, they the ones write how much food stamp money you get on the card. But when people that wanted to help us wanted the job, I know they probably lost it. Cause we ain't even know their name, we ain't know their face, we ain't know it all. So the Congress or the State House, that's legislative, they make laws. So what we want from the president is what they do. Okay, y'all? See, they election every 2 years, but we don't ever even go to those. The Congress, they can raise minimum wage, but we ain't even really know it though. So you know how back in 08, when we all voted for Obama, we was all supposed to go back in 2010 and vote for the Congress. Cause they the ones make child support laws. They the ones choose if your kids at school get to eat steak or corn dogs. The State House make the court costs. So if the country failed, then you can't say it's them, it's your fault. Cause y'all ain't know to vote for Congress members that was for y'all. And they don't gotta leave after 4 years, and we just let them sit. See, they don't want to tell you this, they want you to focus on the president. Now the third branch is the judicial, that's judges. They the reason why John Crawford and Trayvon ain't had justice. So when Meek Mill got locked up just for popping willies, we blame the judge and not the city when they let her get voted in, cause they ain't know who to vote against. Imagine life on the other side. Roads better, schools better, everybody get their license back, grocery store food better, custody of your kids back, homeless people get new shelters. If we gon' fix the U.S., we gotta start with them 2 letters, me and you. Somebody told us that the government wanna keep us broke, but the only reason why those people in the government is cause we ain't vote. And I ain't talking about the president, I'm talking about the ones we ain't know. See, they was gonna try to keep it low, but it's gonna hurt them when they see the polls.
Every time you stay home, someone is making a decision about you, making decisions about the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food your kids eat, and how much money you bring home every 2 weeks. So every time you sit out an election, every time you don't show up because you think it doesn't matter, someone else is happy that you didn't show up, so they can make that decision for you. Vote.
Yeah. So we've had conversations. We earlier this year, Open Buffalo, we passed out over 15,000 reusable masks to the community, and that wasn't just a pickup location. Those were 15,000 conversations that we're having with people throughout the community. And some of the things that were expressed in the video are real. A lot of people feel as though their voice doesn't count. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like your voice is being heard through voting? The issues that you care about, are they being reflected in policy and legislation? So if you have your smartphone, you can use the QR code on the screen, or you can go to minty.com and use this code, 41 62 74 5. And I want to see how folks on this call feel. Do you feel as though your voice is being heard right now and through voting? All right. We have 10 people that have participated in the poll.
Hello, everyone. Excuse me for being late. Late. I was like typing and logging into the wrong uh, box. Apologize.
Hi, Todd.
Hello.
Right, we have 14 people. So again, if you'll use the QR code and visit minty.com, or if you just go to minty.com, you can put in 41, 62, 74, and 5. We have 17 people that have cast their vote so far. And you don't have to be on the Blue Jeans session in order to participate in the Minty poll. You can also do it on Facebook Live as well. So I'll ask Laura and Todd and Max to help facilitate the questions that might emerge from the chat box, because I can't see it. But what do we see from this? What do we see with the results that are coming in? And we're not even talking about the entire city. For the most part, we're looking at folks that share a very small community at Buffalo State, and just looking at how diverse the responses are coming in. What are we noticing, or what is the split telling us? And if something is resonating with you, feel free to put that in the chat box.
Something happened to the oh, there they are. Yep.
So it looks like just about everyone has cast their vote. So have we noticed anything about the split? For me, I noticed that despite all of the billboards and the commercials and the celebrity endorsements and the hip hop songs, there's still a very wide felt frustration and confusion around voting. That's what I see. I see that out of the responses, for 13 people to say that they're not even sure if their voice is even being heard through voting, it's problematic, right?
I think there's some similar comments here, Franchelle. Some people notice that the majority feel that there is power in their vote, but similarly to what you're saying, there's some comments about a lot of people being unsure if their voice is being heard, don't know if their voice is being heard, and there's quite a bit of uncertainty. So similar things to what you're saying there.
And regardless of how you responded or how you feel, we can go back to that because we'll go to the brief voting history. Regardless of how you feel, you are justified in how you feel. As we go through the history of voting, you'll see that voting is very recent for a lot of us that are on this call, right? Many of us, even 100 years ago, did not have the right to vote in this country. So for us to feel as though we have no say in our current political system is fine. Or if you feel power in our current political system, that's fine too. So I just want to reaffirm that however you're feeling in this moment, in this political climate, is perfectly okay. So I want to show a really quick video. It's called The Brief History of Voting in the United States. And it'll be a lot of the food that we use to further today's conversation.
And I want to add, guys, just pay attention to the video because there may be like a short pop quiz or something.
Hello, I'm Perez Hilton. Did you know that more people in the United States check their Facebook and watch the Super Bowl than exercise their right to vote? We've got some serious issues to deal with. So how come so many of us don't even bother to vote? Is it because we don't care? Or maybe it's because we don't know our history. So let's go back, way back,
Our country's first election came after fighting for our independence, a fight that cost many lives, but it was worth it because instead of being ruled by a king, we were finally able to make our own laws.
But not everybody was allowed to participate. You see, back then, you had to own property, be white, and a man in order to actually vote. Now, things continued that way for about 80 years, until after the Civil War, when slavery was abolished and all men were given the right to vote.
Now hold up a minute. Just because we had the right to vote didn't mean we could use it. See, all these new voters wanted to participate, which threatened the people in power and their ability to stay in power. So they tried to stop us with violence and shady new requirements like literacy tests and poll taxes. We had to fight for nearly 100 years before the Voting Rights Act passed, which finally outlawed these dirty tricks.
And you weren't the only ones that had to fight for your right to vote. Somehow women got left out and had to organize and fight state by state. Until we took our fight to Washington and finally got our right to vote all across the country. And even once the laws guaranteed every person the ability to vote, you still had to be 21 in most states. So when our government began drafting people under 21 to go fight in Vietnam, they realized their lives were at stake and they had no say. Young people all across the country rose up in protest and demanded that everyone over 18 should be allowed to vote.
And since then, young people's votes have been crucial in deciding lots of big elections. Like in 2008, when a black candidate had a real chance to become president, young people showed up in record numbers. And every year, we make up a larger share of the voting population, giving young people more power, but only if we participate.
So let me break it down. Together, there is so much we can decide, like whether or not we should go to war, or how we spend our money, and how we power our lives.
We can determine who has the right to marry, and who has the right to choose, what possessions should be outlawed, and whether or not we should legalize.
It's up to you to make your choices and shape our future. If we sit on the sidelines, then others will make it work for them instead of us. So let's make our voices heard.
So what would it take for you to vote?
All right, I want to introduce my friend and colleague, Todd Timmons. Todd is the Youth Engagement Coordinator here at Open Buffalo, and he's been leading our civic initiatives and our voter registration drive all throughout 2020. So, so I want to introduce him. Say hi, Todd.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for having me. Buff State, hello.
So if we want to go to the So now we want to hear from you. Why is voting important to you? And before you start heading over to Minty.com, it's the same process, QR code, or you can go directly to the website and put in this code. And before you head over there, I want you to really think about what are the issues that have been happening for you, your family, and your classmates in 2020 that are driving you to the polls, or not. But again, what are those issues that are important to you? I'll give you about 90 seconds to get those responses in. And feel free to put in as many issues that come to you as possible. If you have one major issue that's driving you, feel free to put that in. Or if you say, I can't choose, and I have a dozen issues. COVID, yes. Marriage equality, women's rights, Black Lives Matter.
Seen a lot of good responses in there. Quality really standing out. COVID. Environment, climate change.
Twitter fingers. Yeah, Twitter fingers is enough to drive me to the polls too.
Racism, voice. My rights. Healthcare opportunity. How justice is standing out.
So even though some words are displayed larger than the other, that doesn't equate importance. And each of the issues that you displayed on the screen are equally important for numerous reasons. But what I see on the screen, and responses are still coming in, feel free. I definitely want to share this graphic with you all at Buff State to really be a reminder. Like, this is what we're fighting for in the next couple of days. This is what we're fighting for going into the next semester. That we're not just talking about education equity, right? And many times when we're in academic environments, we're talking about funding for education, where we're talking about classroom size or things that have to do with our pursuing of degrees in education. And that's great. But as you can see, when we step onto campuses or in front of a computer screen, we live multifaceted lives, right? And even though we've come to a political science class or biology 101, we're still bringing the need for women's rights, the need for climate change or COVID eradication. Like, all of these things are impacting us on multiple levels. And so a lot of the work that we do at Open Buffalo is helping people see the intersectionality between all of our issues, right? And as the civil rights activist Audre Lorde would say, that there isn't such thing as a hierarchy of oppression, right? And many times we like to play an oppression Olympics, right? And that my people were more oppressed than your people, right? Or that I've had it so much more rough than you, right? But we see exactly how much all of these issues are impacting all of us. So thank you for your honesty and transparency. You can feel free as the presentation goes on, if you want to continue to put these words to really document today's session, you can feel free to do that as the presentation goes on as well. Right. Now, Mr. Timmons warned everyone that there was a pop quiz coming up, and this is the pop quiz. So, in what year did all Americans get the right to vote? Don't worry, I won't send you out. You don't have to go back to Mincy. You can just put this into the chat. What year did all Americans get the right to vote?
We got 5 responses. 4,
Okay.
5, 6, 7, 8. Everyone's saying 1972.
Okay.
One person said none of the above.
Okay.
2, 3, 4 people. Yeah, a lot of
4
different...
people said none of the above?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have one vote for 1918.
Yeah, 1918 as well.
And a comment that children can't vote. So I guess that would be a none of the above answer.
And then over on the Facebook, we have a vote for none of the above.
So, between 1918 and 1920, women gained on a state and national level the right to vote. In 1865, formerly enslaved Africans were granted the right to vote with a small caveat, and I'll get back to that small caveat. In 1972, young people, and this was really birthed off of an anti-war movement, gained the right to vote as well. Many young people said, if I could be drafted to war to die for this country, I should have a right to vote, and who's actually making that decision. So for the folks that said none of the above, they are actually correct. And here's why. In 1865, when formerly enslaved Africans were granted the right to vote, there were numerous voter suppression tactics. However, baked into the 13th Amendment of the Constitution, it was legal to disenfranchise those that were incarcerated. So not only were they able to disenfranchise individuals while they were incarcerated, they could also block them from voting after they were released as well. It also legalized slavery within incarceration and prison systems throughout the U.S. And that's why we do see a level of exploitation in regards to what's happening inside the criminal justice system and the prison industrial complex. So a lot of people don't know, but if you pop open your Constitution, there is a clause that still calls for legalized slavery if you are currently incarcerated. So because of that, all Americans actually do not have the right to vote in the U.S. right now. All right. Even though folks have the right to vote, doesn't mean that they always use it. In 2017, just right here in 716, Buffalo and Western New York, in the city and county elections, only 10% of youth ages 18 to 30 actually turned out to vote. In the 2016 presidential election, youth turnout was just 43%. And for all voters, the turnout in 2017 for the city and county elections were between 34 and 66%. In New York State, and this also goes into a lot of the confusion around voting rights and who's actually eligible to vote in New York State. In 2018, actually, New York State passed a suite of very progressive changes to the New York State voting eligibility requirements. In New York State, in order to register to vote and vote, of course, you have to be a U.S. citizen and 18 years of age on election day or turning 18 by December 31st. So that means if you're on the call today and you have registered to vote, you can vote if you're 17. As long as if you're a Capricorn like myself, you can still vote. So just keep that in mind. If you have friends or family that's 17, but they'll be 18 before December 31st, please tell them that they do have a right to vote. You have to be a resident at least 30 days in the county and state or city where you're going to vote. And now one of the new changes that came in the New York State progressive changes that came in a few years ago, you can actually register to vote at age 16. And that was really birthed off of, again, the young people momentum and movement that's been happening in regards to anti-gun violence and some of the climate change movement. And young people said, look, if I can help turn out 500 people, 1,000 people in my community, I should have the ability to at least register these young people that are coming out. So this is actually a place that maybe we can have future advocacy. Maybe we want to lower the voting age to 16. Just things that we can think about. Also in New York State, if you have a felony conviction, you can vote. You'll need to re-register after your release, but that is one of the changes that the governor made in his executive order. So there are some restrictions and gray area around that, but if you have any questions about yourself or a family member, you can reach out to the New York State Parole Board, or you can even reach out to Open Buffalo with specific questions if you are currently eligible to vote in New York State. All right, Todd.
Yeah. So what to know for election day? Usually, if you're a first-time voter, they ask for your identification just to verify that it's you. But if you voted before, they shouldn't ask for your ID. If you're unable to provide identification, you must vote with an affidavit ballot, meaning you have to sign saying you are who you are and this is who you will be voting for and things like that. And all of that information will have to be accurate information, or you will be like subject to like a fine for like falsifying documents and things like that. But you don't really need anything for to vote, just yourself and maybe a pen. And once you get there, they'll ask you to sign, and you're all ready to vote.
And I want to lift up a young local artist, Ashanti Wilson. This poster was produced as a result of a Western New York-wide artist contest and encouraging people to vote. And again, her name is Ashanti Wilson, and she designed this poster that we've been using.
Yeah.
All right. If you leave with nothing else today, I want you to say, you don't have to come off mute to say it, just say it to yourself. Preparation equals power. I'm going to say that again. Preparation equals power. You have the power to make a few decisions in order to make sure that you're able to cast your vote this election season. We have a lot of advocates and activists from across the state to ensure that we actually have these additional provisions in our community in order to go vote. The first decision that you have to make is, do you want to vote by mail or in person? And if you choose to vote by mail, this is what you should know. Mail-in voting or absentee voting. First, if you haven't done it today, before 5 o'clock is actually the last time that you can request an absentee ballot. So if you're looking to vote and if you're logging in from New York City or another part of the state and you're looking to vote by mail, you have until 5 o'clock today in order to request that mail-in ballot. Now, if you're like a lot of people, you have requested a mail-in ballot and it's probably sitting on your desk right now. Maybe you have a coffee cup sitting on top of it, right? But there's a couple of things that you should think about as you're filling out this absentee ballot or your mail-in ballot. It's really important for you to read every line of your ballot. We're seeing parts of the country where there are ballots that are being disqualified because folks haven't filled out the entirety of it or haven't sealed both envelopes. So again, you want to make sure that you're filling out the entire absentee ballot. Or you can download absentee ballot from the State Board of Elections at elections.ny.gov. Fill out the application completely. I can't emphasize that enough. And submit your absentee ballots. I know that there has been confusion again in other communities. Requesting the ballot, it is a two-step program. You have to request it and then send it back in. The deadline to do that again is today, but you have until it has to be postmarked by November 3rd in order for it to be counted. Or you can take your ballot to any of the early voting locations across the county, or you can take it directly to the Board of Elections as well. So again, it's a two-step process. Request it, send it back in. The next decision, do you want to vote early or on election day? That is a key question for myself. I want to vote in person, right? I get a little energy from standing in line and engaging with voters outside. So for me, that's important. But however you choose to protect yourself and your family, that's the decision that you need to go with. Early voting started this past Saturday, October 24th, and there were historic lines all across the city of Buffalo. So for everyone that has been doing work to get out the vote, congratulations. You've been doing an incredible job to make sure that folks know their rights. You can vote early at any of the early polling locations. Polling locations run from noon to 9. If you're local in the Buffalo community, chances are your early voting location and your typical voting location is different. So regardless if you want to vote early or on election day, you'll just want to take a few minutes just to look up. You can go to voterlookup.elections.ny.gov and put in your zip code and your name, and it'll populate places that you can go early vote or vote in person. If you are interested in voting on Election Day, polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. All right. Make a decision today. Please take 5 minutes and just think about what are the options that work for you in order to vote. This election season, we should be prepared to stand in long lines. And here in Western New York, in Buffalo, that can be very uncomfortable. The temperatures are changing. It could rain, it could snow. We are Bill's Mafia here in Western New York, so we should be equipped to stand outside and tailgate, but that's not always the case, right? So we need to make sure that we're preparing ourselves to have a tolerable, not just a tolerable, but an enjoyable experience. So who's in your voting crew? Who in your network votes at the same place as you? And form a team, people that you might not mind hanging out with for an hour or a few hours. If you're bringing your children with you, remember to keep snacks or hand warmers or hot chocolate, things to keep them occupied in a potential 1 to 3 hour wait. Also, what's in your tote? What's in your bag? Snacks, water, cell phone charger, medicine, hand sanitizer. Maybe you want to bring a folding chair. What are the things that would make you comfortable for a long wait?
Franchelle, we got a question in the chat.
Sure.
Yeah, Rav asked, can I drop an absentee ballot in a drop-off box?
Well, we don't have any drop-off boxes. The drop-off boxes are actually within early voting locations. So if you drop into any of the 10 early voting locations throughout the city of Buffalo, or you can go to that voter lookup link and find the closest early voting location. But we don't have the drop boxes like a lot of states do.
And one more question from Tristan. If someone requested a mail-in ballot, can they change their mind and vote in person?
You absolutely can. And thank you for bringing that question up, because that was a point that I wanted to make on a previous slide and it slipped my mind. But yes, a lot of people requested absentee ballots earlier in the year, and now they feel more comfortable going to vote, or they feel less secure with mail-in ballots. So whatever the case is, even if you have your absentee ballot sitting right there on the desk with you, you can still go and vote in person. Right. Todd.
Some important takeaways from today's presentation is the history of voting. The preparation equals power, the important dates and deadlines, mail-in voting, and the 3 branches of government. Election day is November 3rd, and the deadline to request a ballot by mail is today, like 4 minutes. And the early period runs from the 24th until Sunday, the 1st. So I suggest everyone take advantage of the early voting to get in there and out, or you can go on a regular day. But if you take advantage of the early voting, you can vote anywhere in Erie County. That's like one of the perks of early voting. So that's why I recommend early voting. But if you vote on November 3rd, you will have to go to the place that's on your registration card.
All right. Voter suppression is real. We see things that in excessively long lines are a form of voter suppression. If people aren't, if you know that you have registered and you have received a voter registration card in the mail and they're denying you the ability to cast your vote, please report anything, even if you don't know voter election law, that's fine. If anything is on your spirit while you're going to cast your vote and you feel troubled by it, please report those things to the Attorney General. You can send an email, you can call the hotline, and they can connect you with legal rights observers that are stationed all across the state in order to protect your vote. And there's numerous tools and resources that you can get to ensure that your vote is protected. So we'll definitely send all of these links to you all so that you have a reference manual. You can also go to the Open Buffalo website and our social media. All of these links and resources are listed on our social media and on our website, 716 Votes. All right, keep up with the work that we're doing. You can be a part of our early voting social media campaign. That's exciting. Woo! I don't know if you can still see me on the screen, but you can access one of these posters on the campus of Buffalo State. On the campus of Buffalo State, or you can come by the Open Buffalo office. We just want to give positive energy in the community that voting, it's okay to vote. Right? It's an enjoyable experience. It's a place that you could really build community. And so we just want to share positive voting stories. We're seeing a lot of things happening across the country and also in the media. So we just want to help combat that narrative by showing that we're out there, we're voting, and we're active. So if you're interested in submitting a photo, feel free to do that. If you're interested in joining our Youth Advocacy Council, Todd Timmons is the man that you want to reach out to. His email is listed. You can download and listen to our podcast, Open, O-P-E-N. You have to spell it like that when you're searching for it. And really keep up with the activities and the events that we're doing, and also like what's the political dialogue that's happening here in Western New York. And we talk about all issues that relate back to racial, economic, and climate justice. If you're not registered to vote, it's never too late. Maybe you can't vote in this upcoming election, or if you have that family member, that uncle that just refuses to vote, you have from now until whenever to still get those individuals to vote. So you can register them right on the Open Buffalo website, openbuffalo.org/716votes. Through a partnership with Rock the Vote, you're able to register people to vote right online. And that is it. And I have done a lot of talking, so I want to open it up for questions that you all might have. Questions, comments, reflections, anxieties that you might be feeling, whatever it is. Let's take a few minutes and just kind of talk about that in a safe and inclusive way.
Excellent. Let's give our presenters a big shout out, congratulations, and thank you for spending this time with us. We want our students to come away with a strong sense of responsibility for voting and an understanding of historic injustice and inequity in voting rights. And I think you've really touched on all those things, and I really thank you for spending the time with us. And while the students are thinking about their own questions, which you can put in the chat again, or you can raise your hand and we can unmute for this Q&A time, I can kind of start off with a question that came up for me. So you talked about kind of the youth vote mobilization, right? In 2016, I think the number you put up there was 43% of youth ages 18 to, was it 25, turned out to vote, right? And you talked about that transformation, that mobilization, that action. What are some ways that students here at Buffalo State and youth across the country can kind of mobilize their own friends and family? You know what I mean? How do they take a friend with them, to the early voting location, to the poll? How do they try? What are some some techniques to engage their friends at the polls? Any thoughts on that?
So make it personal for you. Don't use a talking point that you heard on CNN, right? We get enough of that, right? Like, let's go back to the responses that we put on the screen, right? And some of those things that are driving us to the polls. For me, let's say 20 years ago, drug sentencing and racial justice was the number one thing that drove me to become involved in the community, right? But today it's all about climate change, right? I have a 2-year-old. I have one that's on the way right now, and and I am super concerned about the world, the planet, the air, the water that I'm leaving for my babies, right? So it's not a political ad. You don't even have to get into the downfall of democracy. Like, people don't care about that. They want to know what's on your heart. So you don't have to have a degree in politics to talk about what's important to you. And I would encourage people, when they're talking to their family members, their neighborhoods, the person that you get your coffee from, just talk about what's on your heart and what you're feeling in this particular moment, and that we have one small tool that we can use in order to start fixing it. There's a lot of frustration, even within the folks on this particular call, like if your vote actually counts. And I seen a session, they were talking about The Rock, and how if you start personal training today, you're not going to leave tomorrow coming out looking like The Rock, right? That is going to be a slow process, and many of us will never be in that level of shape, right? But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't eat right, that you shouldn't exercise, right? Because you're on a slow path to make improvements to improve your quality of life and how long you get to stay on this planet, right? And really talking about voting in that way, that you're not going to see an overnight change, but it is important to do the first thing that we possibly can in order to change our communities.
I like that analogy of thinking about it like getting in shape, because you are in for the long haul when it comes to politics and voting and making change in the community. There's no short-term immediate answer. Todd, do you have any thoughts on that? Anything you want to build off of what Franchelle said, how students might engage their friends?
Yeah, some things we told our youth who've been working with us throughout this busy year. Just text a few friends in your contact list. Ask them, are they registered to vote, and do they have a plan to vote? Let them know about the early voting and things like that. And if they're going to vote on November 3rd, make sure they know where they're going and things like that. And another way, because the pandemic and everything, a lot of things are on social media. So taking a picture and challenging a few friends, like tagging 10 friends hey, I went to the polling. I'm challenging you all to go and take a picture and tag 10 other friends. So there's a lot of different ways you can encourage your peers, like creating TikToks and things like that, challenges and hashtags as well.
Excellent. All good recommendations and very fun. And, this is a serious matter, but we also need to have fun with it and help each other get energized around the change and the issues that clearly everyone identified in that Menti poll. There's a question in the chat that's the president has said that he wants his supporters to watch the polls, in quotes. Do I have to worry about voter intimidation, and will there be people to protect us from voter intimidation? Either of you want to tackle that question?
Yeah, I'll start, and Todd, if you have anything, feel free to chime in. That's a tough one, right? I don't want to discount it. There's in Buffalo, not to sway votes, but we have a concentration of progressive thinkers in the city of Buffalo, right? So we might not see the level of tension that you could possibly see in other parts of the country. And I'm not saying to discount it, but in Western New York, I believe that there's a lesser chance of outward voter intimidation that we might see in other parts of the state or other parts of the country. But it is something that you should be vigilant in. If you are, I would say, especially if you're an elderly person, you may want to think about bringing a few friends with you just to keep yourself protected if you didn't do mail-in voting or absentee voting. I did share the Attorney General's hotline with you. You do have the ability to call while you're out there. If you feel unsafe, you can definitely report those things to Open Buffalo. We have contacts with organizations like Buffalo Peacemakers and organizations that have been doing peaceful protest monitoring throughout the spring and summer. So there are resources, but we do have to be made aware of it. So if you are aware that there are plans, potential actions, definitely reach out and let us know. But don't just suffer in silence, and don't just go home and put it on Facebook. Definitely reach out to the Attorney General, reach out to Open Buffalo, and we'll definitely see what we can do in regards to protecting your rights and making sure that everyone feels safe.
And just to piggyback off of what Franchelle mentioned, while I was voting earlier, I noticed a sign saying 100 feet away from the polling place. So, I think that was set there specifically for that purpose. So, if you see anyone, trying to, intimidate you while you're waiting in line, my advice would be to ignore them. If they're, 100 feet away, you have the hotline, you can report it, but ignore them. And if they're not in your face or in the line with you, I don't think it should be a big deal. But like Franchelle mentioned, there are groups out there, and if it's reported or anything, we're pretty progressive, and we will work to make sure everyone is voting, voting safely and and not being intimidated. But yeah, they should be 100 feet away from the polling place.
That's a good point to add, and I'm a poll worker also, so when there is a local number, anyone can call as well. It's 858-8891. It's directly to the Erie County Board of Elections. And each party is allowed to have official poll watchers, and those people have identification. So the poll workers who, they're the ones who sign you in and help if there's a problem. Those people are kind of checking, that point you made, Todd, about ensuring that everyone who's, trying to talk to you about your voting interests or plans needs to be 100 feet away from the facility. But they're also checking anyone who comes in claiming they're a poll watcher. And we need to make sure that those people have proper identification and they're official. So there's kind of an official role for that type of thing, but all those points are well taken, and there certainly is, as Franchelle pointed out in the presentation, places where voter intimidation is a serious issue. New York being a pretty blue state, it's not as much of a we're not a state that anyone is really concerned about in terms of going one way or the other. We're pretty solidly blue in New York year to year, so it's not as high stakes as other states. So those are definitely all good points that you've made to that question about intimidation. Are there any other questions that have come up in chat, or any students that want to unmute?
Amaya has a question.
Great. You want to unmute and ask your question?
I'm not sure if that's what that star means, but.
Oh, okay. Is that Amaya, you thought?
Yeah.
Amaya,
Amaya, did you have a question? Evan, did you have a question?
Those stars.
Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, those stars look like they're next to our names.
Okay.
Have you, again, kind of on that mobilization point, I know so many groups have really spent so much energy on kind of voter engagement, right? Registration and commitment to vote and making a plan. I haven't seen anything about voter registration numbers, particularly in that youth vote. Has anything been released that you've seen that's showing kind of what new registration numbers look like, especially since voter registration closed a week or so ago? I thought there might be some information that came out, but I haven't seen anything.
I have not seen any official numbers. I am a part of numerous coalitions and campaigns, even outside of Open Buffalo. And so the rough number that I put together last week was about 12,000. And that was just the cumulative work of just the organizations that I've been a part of. So I have no idea what the actual city or regional impact would be. But even just that small fragment to say that 12,000 new voters are now on the roll, I think is pretty significant. But hopefully after the election, I know after the new year, voter data is publicly available through FOIL.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if the Board of Elections actually releases that information.
Maybe they can't do that until after the election. That's probably true. So there's a lot of resources in the chat as well. The Civic and Community Engagement Office has built out a huge voter engagement page with a lot of resources. Aurora's been putting in the chat. The Open Buffalo website is also a tremendous resource, and there's great information on Open Buffalo, again, really focused at that youth engagement vote, and there's good connections and resources there. We will have any time this week, and we'll follow up with you with all the students who registered. We do have those posters that Todd pointed out. We'd love students to pick those up in our office, which is South Wing 120, why I vote early. And you can hashtag yourself and be included in all the Open Buffalo resources about that. So we'd love to see students stop by and pick those up. We have 200 of them, so grab them for your friends, your family, your student org, anything you want. So we'll make sure we send that out as a follow-up as well. Any last comments or questions for our presenters? Any other information or point out and share before we say good evening?
Yeah, I definitely want to thank everybody for participating tonight. And again, thank you to Open Buffalo for hosting this really informative workshop. I just have a couple of things, but on our website, so cce.buffalostate.edu/BDTC, that's the Bengals Dare to Care website. There's resources, engagement materials that you can read more about voting and civil rights and racial justice and how those things are intertwined with one another. There's some articles, there's some podcasts you can listen to. There's also opportunities for you to take action. I put them in the chat as well. But one of the things that's really important is to contact your senators and tell them to pass the Voting Rights Advancement Act to make sure that the Voting Rights Act that was gutted in 2013 does not continue to create these voter suppression tactics across the country. So that's one way. Making a voting plan also on there under that Take Action section for this week's worth of events. And then any Buff State student who hadn't got the message prior to this, if you do need to sign in for the event, there's a link in the chat to do so, or you can email our office at cce@buffalostate.edu. That's cat@buffalostate.edu. But thank you so much for joining us, and thank you again to Franchelle and to Todd today for talking about voting. So awesome.
It's such a critical topic, and in particular in thinking about disenfranchised voters and the complicated history of inequity, through, really since the country's founded, and the fact that many Americans have, as you pointed out in the presentation, have not had the right to vote very long. And if we don't exercise that right to vote, we don't want to lose it, right? So we need to continue to engage and activate and mobilize and respect our role and responsibility at the polls and in every day as active citizens. And this has been a really important conversation. We really appreciate your time, and we look forward to the continued collaboration, and got many elections to come. So it does not end here. This is one out of many, many opportunities. So again, as Franchelle said, if you haven't registered yet, it's not too late. Maybe you can't vote next Tuesday, but there are many, many opportunities to exercise your voting responsibilities and opportunities. So thanks very much. There are some